Hello and welcome to the Hedonistic Way at Midday show. I am Renee Main and I have this beautiful, adventurous medicine woman with me today. She's separating the dark from the deceitful. She's breaking down illusions that stop us from truly living. She sees multiple worlds through the lens of her eyes and her isness. And she is shattering beliefs, corruption, incongruence in the world. She is restoring the lineage of white Britain and witches before they were forced into suppression and burnt at the stakes. She is here to enlighten us about just how rich the culture is through the English lineage and what we can and how we can lean in and honor our lineage so we don't lean on other cultures and appropriate them. It is such an honor to have the beautiful Patricia Newton on the show today. Welcome.
Thanks for asking me. That's a big intro.
It is. And we had a brief conversation on Friday, but as soon as I stepped off the phone, I was like a mad woman at the keyboard because I knew exactly what wanted to come through to describe you. So that's really cool. So what do I want to ask you first? I want to ask you, what is alive in you right here and right now in this moment?
There's a lot of things that are alive. I've done a pretty big journey in the last couple of months. I crewed at Glastonbury online prac training, and I got steeped into the archetypes of that. And so I was I've got Glastonbury in the background. I connect with archetypes all the time, and I kind of shift or merge into them when I'm doing some role, some job. I just become them. And I've just completed a shamanic womb journey. So prior to that, I'd had a blue diamond channeling and some follow-up healing, and everything has accelerated so much. It's almost like the facets of a diamond were missing a couple of pieces, and they've now come together, and the whole thing is kind of spinning around and throwing off the magic.
Beautiful. It sounds really powerful, and yet also just the severity of it, the whirlwind of it. So how have you managed to anchor yourself and ground yourself through this ascension?
By making sure I check my energy and the things I'm doing, and anything that affects me, I will take steps to clear things, meditate, ground, do whatever I need to, walk on the earth. The big thing is walk on the earth. And I spent the last 8 days in a Vesica Pisces sacred geometry. And then yesterday I printed out some notes of a course I did last year, Practical Magic. And of course that had a Vesica Pisces, and I'd forgotten, and I thought, oh yeah, it's like all roads lead to Rome.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you about that is because the spiral being in Glastonbury, and I seen your altar and a picture of it, and there's something about Glastonbury and the spiral training being there this year, and I seen your altar, and just it awakened something in me. Like there's this hum, it's like a remembrance for me. Why is Glastonbury so alive within us? What is the potency behind it?
There's a lot of potency from Glastonbury. I
Yeah.
actually did a Reiki Master's course there 7 years ago and stayed in the old abbey. And you've got chalice walls. Glastonbury is actually the heart chakra of the world.
Right.
We've got chakras, but they're actually the earth has chakras, and that is the heart, Glastonbury. And of course, Avalon was myth and legend would be where Arthur and Guinevere lived. The tower, they believe, is the castle remains, and the flat land around was sea. And there's many caves and Tintagel, Cornwall. The Celts, it's all connected. It's huge heritage sites. And when you go there, you will just feel the magic, the myth, the depth of connection to the old ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about that, and I'm just want to, yeah, so let's just go there now. You know, we were talking about, and one of the reasons why I reached out to you is, and I didn't even know where you were from, but there was just something in me that I thought, like, you will know. I feel like that, and I have to give a hat tip off to Paisley Hart as well, is because I seen a snippet of his podcast that he did. It's called Culture Conversations, and Paisley Hart's been on the show, and he's just a person that I deeply admire, and he's a wonderful, wonderful human. But he was talking about cultural appropriation, and in that little excerpt of the video, they were talking about how the white culture, you know, can feel quite empty, and that's why we lean on other indigenous cultures so we can feel that richness. Now, obviously, there's a large portion of the world, there's a large portion of most Australians, I'll say most, but correct me if I'm wrong, most Australians are from an English Britain background. So I wanted to shed some light, because I know that Britain and the UK have so many cultures they have not so many cultures. They have a culture that is it's rich, and it's deeply alive, and it's deeply honoring and spiritual, beyond the colonization of the perception of how we perceive it, especially around everything that's happening at the moment. I think we can be so closely tied to white privilege, and there's shame and there's guilt around that, and we're wanting to come forward and lead as allies. So how can we lean on our own culture, and so tell us about the lineage of the richness beyond before the colonization.
Well, of course, the British Isles was conquered by many different people from all over Europe. You had the Romans, the Vikings, Normans, and Saxons, of course, are from Germany. So you've got Anglo-Saxons, which of course would be like German origin. But when you look at ancient tribes, the Celts go back thousands of years, and they started off all over Europe.
Yeah.
And Spain came to England. So you've got England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales.
Yeah.
So when you look back in history, there were the Romans came and slaughtered a lot of the Druids, which were very steeped in belonging to the earth. Everything that they did, Druids, it means knowledge immersion. And they've been aligned actually to Vedic culture. And a lot of the things in the Druids, which people probably wouldn't realize, they parallels with Hindu. So you've got lots of comparisons where when they look back at historians, but the Druids go back thousands of years. And when Christianity came to England, like from Rome, Augustine, he decided the barbarians had to be like annihilated, and thousands of druids were. But when you looked at the druids, they were very learned, they were prophets, they lived by the land, they lived in harmony with animals, plants, and even the Celts, which Druids is only a small, like if you called it a religion, but the Celts lived in harmony with nature, and theirs was to preserve animal and plants, like what we should be doing now. And that people really like decided, because they weren't, you know, of the same culture like the Romans. I mean, look at the signs around England. You've got roads, baths. They were terrorized with Scottish, so that's why they built Hadrian's Wall, to keep them out.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of culture, but if you look at all of them, they had some form of divination. And what's divination? You know, you get books on it and people would say, well, you know, really what it means is to be inspired by God. Yeah. So whatever the gods were to those people, you could call about Wicca. Wicca means wise woman. You've got the Romans, and they had their gods. They've got Greeks, which was Pan. And then the Vikings, they believed more in prophecy and having seers predict the future and looking for signs and look like the heavens. And, you know, if they got bad signs, they believed they were going to lose the battle and things like that. Yeah. So everyone's had the same form of looking for signs, symbols, things from nature to give you guidance. Yeah. But when you look at that, you think, well, you know, that held close. A lot of Celts, when religion started coming into it with Christianity, Christianity came to convert people. So they took things there, like the chalice, the altar, Athames. They would use the same tools to get them into the Christian church. So they felt they weren't losing anything, but in a way, they were kind of being hoodwinked. But for a long time, they blessed the tools, the crops, they blessed the seeds, they looked at the moon for signs of the right time to plant. But all those things were incorporated to get people into that religion and that belief. Yeah. And then the big thing is when you got the onset of the church combining forces with medicine, early doctors who did horrific things to people, bored holes in the skull for a headache to let the demons out, leeches, bloodletting, all of that. But it became a patriarchal society. And the wise women that in the villages grew herbs to help people getting ready for childbirth and things like that. They were then demonized, and they created superstition around people that didn't comply. A bit like COVID now. If you don't fall into line, you're going to get excluded from the masses, and then there'll be some form of, if you like, annihilation, where they decided that women, lunatics, criminals, savages, anybody that didn't fit the realm of falling into the box would be really victimized and turn people against you. And that's quite easy. You can feel division now with different beliefs in what's happening about health, where some people believe, you know, if you don't wear a mask and you don't lock yourself in the house and you go out, you're going to harm me. So that's coming down the line. But the big thing for people, why did they give up the heritage and the strong cultures? Fear, accusation, punishment, death. Quite easy. You know, if you might have, you know, a lamb was born and it didn't breathe. You might clear the membranes and blow into the lamb's mouth. Wow, she's a witch. She done mouth to mouth and brought that lamb back. They would have been burned at stake. Yeah. And that was, look, there were more women killed across Europe in the Witchfinder General days. Matthew Hopkins went right across Europe. They reckon more than 9 million, mostly women, were killed in the Witchfinder General's hands. Happy to say he was tried for witchcraft and he got the same ending. And I thought, yes.
Isn't it ironic?
It's it.
So before this witch hunt, before this segregation, in terms of ritual, what would have a ritual looked like? You know, you've mentioned the altar and the chalice.
Yeah.
How would we honor, how would we let's say evoke and invoke the sacredness? What would we do?
Well, sacred symbols, sacred geometry. So when you look at things like the pentagram, it's the elements. You've got 5 elements: fire, earth, water, ether. And when you look at the elements, they're attached to a different meaning, each element. So fire can be very cleansing. Water is linked to emotion and bladder, kidneys, and it's like free flowing and it being in the flow. Earth, of course, is like being grounded, and it's like we put things in the earth and the earth gives back. So if you plant things, but also it gives back in the form of crystals, because crystals are formed in the earth. So if you were going to honor, and like you were going to do a ritual and you use sacred geometry, and then you honor, like if you call in an archetype is in that collective field. An archetype is an energy. Energy never dies, it just changes form.
Yeah.
So if you wanted, like in the shamanic womb journey, calling in Magdalene, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, whoever you desire to feel, to communicate with, because basically what people did was, in divination, it was a way of knowing the world, and you were speaking to the soul or the spirit. So you could speak to the spirit of plants or animals. You know, if people had a totem, an animal that they believed was going to help them get through something, you know, I mean, there's an old saying, when the ravens leave the Tower of London, the Monica will fall. And so people would be very afraid, if they've been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, if suddenly something wipes them out completely. And in the old days, that would be seen as a bad omen, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something before about, you know, like the archetypes and how you become a chameleon, you know, with that. I wanted to ask you, because there's a shadow side to that, especially in spirituality, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, even if you run a spiritual business, you know, we hear a lot about, you know, people become chameleons, and you know, they merge themselves into you know, to other people, they morph themselves, you know, what am I trying to say? You know, they're just essentially regurgitating someone else's message and someone else's truth. So how do you, when you say, you know, you become a chameleon to that archetype, how do you drop in to that soul self and that archetype within you, so it's authentic to you and you're not becoming a parrot or a chameleon to someone else's energy?
Well, it's like, to thine own self be true. If you have actually worked out, we've all got many archetypes within us. We've got like the innocent adventurer, the little child, and that's the playful aspect of you. That's the bit that will go off on an adventure and not see danger and be very naive, and then, you know, that's quite strong in me. It takes me halfway around the world. But then you get like the sovereignty of a queen, where you have to you know, be in your power with the sovereign sort of, if you were looking over a kingdom, whatever you want to call it, you would be looking after your subjects and making they all get nurtured, fed, protected when the enemy came to attack. It's like King Arthur. You would be like, I was converting an old tin shed to a studio 3 years ago, and I've got this beautiful space. I knew I had to be the knight on a mission. Don't stop till you've got the Holy Grail. Even if I was on my knees and it got really hard coordinating traders and things didn't go according to plan, I thought, oh my God, it's never going to get frigging finished this. It's going to be on forever. I'm impatience in the back flowers. I want it done yesterday, not tomorrow. So for me, it was like, hurry up, let's get this done. Well, I would come back to within, I would ground myself, I would look at the reason, why did I want it? What was my goal? What was it going to make my heart? How was it going to make my heart sing by? having that creation and being in the flow. And it was about getting yourself back in the flow state, regrouping, nurturing yourself, having a break for a day, to then coming back to the night on a mission. Don't stop till we've got the Holy Grail. Till the Holy Grail was a sacred space. I could run workshops and cultivate it into be that when people walk in, they feel it. They just drop in and think, oh my God, this place is like sanctuary. It's got amazing energy. But when I was actually in the midst of it, one minute I'd have to be, you know, almost like commanding all the men who were working, and I had to coordinate it, which really was like a leadership role. So knowing that I've run hospitals, I've done every job in a hospital. I've been bedside nurse and I've been an educator. I've been taught students. So I can easily merge into, I know the roles and the traits really well. And if I was going into the shadow and it wasn't serving me, you've got to integrate. The shadow is your friend. You don't knock it on the head. You pull it into you and you merge and get them balanced.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I absolutely agree. And I was saying to my partner, you know, this morning is, you know, as we're going into our second wave and we're going into isolation here in Melbourne, you know, I was saying to my partner, I'm completely unafraid. Like, I'm no stranger to adversity and I really feel comfortable in the dark. And it's giving us an opportunity to just dive deeper and face ourselves and meet ourselves. And I honestly believe, for me, the hum underneath all of this is just inviting us to go within, to dive that little bit deeper and find ourselves and face ourselves and all of those incongruencies, you know, that we're meeting, and finding, you know, whether it's the collapse of the patriarchy, whether it's, you know, whatever conspiracy theory, you know, mask to not mask, you know, all of that, I'll say crap, you know, so, but that, for me, the hum underneath it, that's the alluring hum and underneath, and that's what I'm really trying to honor in that. And that's, I think, you know, when you're speaking of that, like, that's what comes alive in me is honoring that natural flow and that natural evolution and that natural cycle.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, for the white spiritualists, the white leaders that, you know, are changing the way or paving the way and doing all of these things and are unintentionally leaning on cultural appropriation, where they're misusing and disrespecting. It's not in their lineage to use certain things, tools, whatever it is. What can these white leaders lean on in order to, you know, bring to life their own lineage?
Well, in a way, they need to look at the lineage and find out a deeper understanding of how they understood the world, their ancestors. And it's not necessarily, like you say, walking with the ancestors. I actually feel the ancestors have got your back. When you say the universe has got your back, actually say, I believe it's your ancestors. I can see spirit. And before I did, I think it was before I did the spiral crewing, we'd had a full moon and I did a ritual and I called in Arthur Guinevere, the Lady of the Lake, all the archetypes. I wanted to be steeped in that energy and really feel into it and like feel like I was with those characters, and it came to life. But I also called in my ancestors, and a day or so later I was like, I saw my granddad, grandmother, mum, dad, going back eons, and it was like really interesting because it was like, wow, you feel held by that strength of who you are, what's your heritage, where have you come from. My mum and dad worked in the cotton mill, My mum used to say, I'll put you in that cotton mill, you've got to go and bring money. And I'm like, oh no, not the mill, not the torture. You know? I wanted to be a doctor, but it wasn't in a realm of thought that you could jump classes because wealthy people, unless you won a scholarship and all this carry on. But it was very interesting. It was like that mill girl, that cotton mill girl, had true grit and strength and tenacity. And so she's in me. And I learned to embrace it. At one point, I used to say, oh my God, I'm ashamed of my roots. I thought, no, how can you be ashamed of your roots? That's the strength of who you are. So when you take aspects of your lineage and then you integrate them into you, there's so much gold there. There's so much power. I mean, they had hard times. We don't really know the meaning of hard times. We think we do.
Yeah.
We don't. Industrial Revolution, that's the era that I suppose it changed when my parents went to a cotton mill and everything became mechanized. And I was looking the other day, we're in our 4th industrial revolution at the moment. And like you've gone from like mechanization where the tall puddle martyrs smashed the machinery. They got sent to Australia. Punishment.
So what is that? Because that come up this morning when I was chatting. We went for a walk in nature, and I said to my partner, I spoke about the mechanics, and I spoke about, you know, the futurists and the visionaries, but then it getting lost in the line of and in the mechanics of it, and that misalignment. I feel like that's alive. So I want to ask you, what does that look like, and what does this next wave look like? How do we, do we need to dismantle the mechanics or the machine or whatever it is? Or is it an integration that needs to happen? What is your opinion on that?
Well, I think there's a middle road that you have to find a middle road. You're not going to annihilate and get rid of, like everyone's now doing everything online like we are.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a need for like offices in the city with expensive real estate where companies have to rent and pay for this? I don't think that's going to continue.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it will end overnight, but little subtle changes and people will feel very threatened because they've done what they've done forever. You leave school, you do some training, you go to uni if you're fortunate or you want to do it that way, you get a job.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, when things look, I think when I left school, everybody had a job, even the C classes who were, not well educated and not really very bright because they might not have opportunities.
Yeah.
That has not happened in the last God knows how many years. There's a lot of people who've never had work from leaving school and they've kind of stayed at home and made a life that way, but never actually gone to work. And is that because sometimes, I don't know, I don't want to say the wrong thing here, but you need help financially, but if the help is better than going out to work for a lower level job, there's no goal, there's nothing to seek to achieve. So you have to be careful, I think, that in propping things up, that you don't take away a drive. Yeah. And that drive is, for me, I always go back to, will that make my heart sing if I do that? Do I really want to do that? And if I don't want to do it, I now am in a position where I don't have to do it. But at the end of the day, I think there has to be incentives. Maybe they need to create more financial help, to create more entrepreneurial things, not just to get you to do the old line of training to be such a thing. What do you want to be when I leave school? I think that line is wrong and way out of date.
Oh, absolutely. I would even, kind of think or question whether it has ever been in date, I mean, that doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean? Like
it was like, it's funny. I watched a podcast the other week and it resonated, and this is where archetypes came into it as children. So I was watching this woman and she was saying, if you went to a class of 5-year-olds, what do you want to be when you grow up? Yeah. Like they'd all say a pilot or whatever. But then if she said, who's the strongest child in the class? Everyone would stand up.
Yeah.
By the time they've got to like 6, 7, and 8, you might get one person who's got a strong self-belief.
Yeah.
And if that self-belief, by then they've already been put in a kind of box.
Yeah.
So your kid would say, he's the smartest one in the class. That one over there's the bully. He's the class clown.
Yeah.
She just doesn't talk and cries if people speak to her. So they've already pinpointed the
Yeah.
archetypes of who that person displays to the group, to their peers.
Yeah.
And then if that person, that's like, if we were said, you're a such thing, or you're always over the top and you're too sensitive, like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Sensitivity can be a blessing or a curse.
Yeah.
It's a light and a dark.
Absolutely.
But if the person is labeled and then they live in the constraints of that label and what they believe you can do in that archetype, a bully can only get things by taking it or bashing people, you know. It's, to me, it would be a beautiful thing if we discouraged and we led children in a different way so that you don't feel pigeonholed.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, because I think, you know, a lot of what we discuss in, you know, in the hedonistic way is, you know, who are we without all the labels. Absolutely. And without being a byproduct of our life experience? Who are we then? You know, it's totally different, you know, and those labels are, you know, I was having a conversation with my girls last week or the week before, you know, about the things that you might say to people. Like, don't be ignorant to think that you're not having, that's not going to have a ripple effect, an impact on their life, because it does, you know. And labels is huge. Like, I was always pigeonholed into, you know, like I was always seen as, you know, a sook and as highly emotional and highly sensitive, you know. And so a lot of it is really, for me, about going, okay, you know, often those things that people dub as a weakness, I honestly believe is our biggest strength.
I agree, totally.
Yeah. So how do we honor that? How have you managed to ditch all the labels, to encompass your lineage and your ancestors, and how have you managed to clear that lineage and to be this medicine woman that sits before me now?
Well, I had to admit it's taken me a long time, and I could obviously, when you look at hero's journey, and my biggest hero's journey was emigrating to Australia. And that's, you go through that where you're not on a mission, on an adventure, then you go into that dark night of the soul and all hell breaks loose and think, oh my God, what the hell have I done? You know, what, this is really, like, when I can remember when I sat on the plane in Manchester airport, I suddenly thought all my relatives had died. My mum, you know, everybody dear to me had gone. And I started to feel this overwhelming grief. The night on a mission, and the innocent kid had got me there. And I thought, fuck, what have I done now? You know? And so I met with millions of different challenges. All, you know, he had a beautiful established job and house and all this carry on. Obviously, that were trappings and trimmings that you've acquired.
Yeah.
And you have to start again. Literally, it was like that book. I remember reading about the bride stripped bare. There was nothing. You were stripped down to, who the hell are you? What can you do? What are you known for? You're known for nothing. You come into an unknown world, an unknown land. And I thought it was England with sunshine, and it wasn't. So the biggest journey for me is I've done my most growth. I started in the early 90s, learning things, well, trauma, stress, I learned Reiki, and I just kept going, acquiring different things. Also acquired a lot more medical knowledge when I went back into nursing, which was a shock. I had a kind of community role, like a consultancy role, and I ended up back at the bedside. And it was hard going, hard yakka. But I also had lots of strong research knowledge in my head. I've got this thing where I remember facts and figures from 20 odd years ago, you know, and I'd speak out, and I was told to be quiet and not give opinions. And I thought, What do you mean? What do you mean? We're meant to be the best we can be and have the most current knowledge. It should be evidence-based, research-based, sort of, and it was, you stood out because I've vocalized too much. But it made me who I am today. And I suppose that journey was, I've always been an intrepid truth seeker that will stop at no depths until I uncover something. And that's a blessing and a curse. It definitely is both. But in the end, it prevails. It's like, if you call it lightness or bringing dark stuff that could be harmful to others out of the shadow and showing things in the true light, like, that's not as it seems. And people don't really know. If I was asked to do things at high level, managing a place that were detrimental for staff or patients to save money, I'd be like, never, no, fucking never. Like, we'll never give you this job permanently, you know what I mean? You know? And it was said to me by several people, if you played the game, you'd be running the hospital. I said, I'm not into game playing, I'm into being real.
Yes. And that's, I say that all the time, you know, it's like, no, I'm really not interested in playing the game. Like, I'm really not interested into the political who's got the biggest dick contest. I'd much prefer to just speak my truth and show up, you know. So I'm walking the very same line as you with that one. But why are people so quick to label it, let's say, to view things as bad? Let's ask that. Why are so many people so quick to want to label things? Why are so many people so quick to deem things as good or bad? Why? What is that attachment?
Well, I feel they're trying to fully understand every facet of you. And if they can look, last year I did some work on someone. It was crazy, like helping this person leave a really dangerous place where she was in her life. Yeah. In a town that's been, I can't say too much because it would be identified, but she got herself into a place and wanted to somehow extract herself. Yeah. And I've done this for several people. I've helped people leave bad relationships. I think, God, I don't want all these people knocking on my door looking for them. But times I've kind of been very close. And it's like, when you, it's like people like to have you in categories, black and white. Now, this woman who I helped, and she left the state and ended up safe and is blossoming again now. Yeah. She said to me, do you know what a multi-potentialite is? I went, no, I've never heard of one of them. She said, well, you were one. I went, what? And I watched a TED talk on it, and it's very interesting. And it's where you become a master at not one thing. Like if you said to a kid, what are you going to be when I grow up? You know, I'm going to be a pilot. I'm going to be a fireman. That's what little boys would say. Yeah. And you would say, I don't really know what I'm going to be, because you want to be everything. It's almost like the cosmos inside you, where you'll master one thing. So like I've done a lot of high level medical stuff. I've done research. I can see how people created their illness. And then I kept going and going and going and learning new things. And they've all rolled into one, if you like, melting pot, the witch's cauldron. Yeah. And if someone said to me, can I have a health consult and about such a thing? I went, yeah, but what happened 2 years before? What do you mean? What do you mean? Well, it will make you 2 years if you lock into your energetic system and start to block energy meridians and organ dysfunction. It will take about 2 to 3 years. Yeah. What do you mean? And they don't get it. I said, because you've unconsciously created your illness and where you're at in life now by events and the way you've responded to them. And that really, to undo that illness, you've got to get all that trapped energy out of your body and collapse the fact that things have been slowing down. Matter, energetic goes through your body at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, and then starts to slow down organs, function, meridians, chakras, and you're like a car running on one cylinder rather than a V12 E-type firing at this ginormous energetic power. Yeah. And when you clear things in people and they suddenly get this back, they go, oh my God, I feel light. Yeah. I'm going to float away like a balloon if you don't hold me down. And so you've been holding that for so long that it's cost you massive energy to keep it pushed down. Yeah. And yet once they let it, I mean, they often let it out wrongly. Somebody presses a button on a trigger and somebody cops for that, for a lifetime of anger, and they go, I only asked a question, and it was like, but it's more to do with, they don't realize that by not expressing yourself in a healthy manner, you are holding back and you're pushing down, and you're living like the tip of an iceberg, but you're not living a full being. The being, who are you? You're a fraction of your being.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you do things to belong, to not get punished or not seen in a bad light by people. Well, if I do that, they'll judge me, fear of judgment. And if I do that, I'm never going to be happy. Well, you're never going to be happy by not living who you truly are.
That's right. How can people begin, if someone's watching this, to go and going, oh, that is me, that's me, like I'm at the peak of the iceberg. And that's funny because that's the second time that reference has come up today as well.
I wonder why.
How can people begin to unlock this part of themselves that they've shunned away for so long? What can people start to do for that self-inquiry?
Number one, they have to be desirous of change. If somebody comes and they want to collapse patterns, emotions, the way they've learned the world, and they suddenly wake up and they think, God, I don't like who I've become, then that's the starting point. And then inquiry will lead you, it depends how you want to do it. I collapse trapped energy and kind of give them the life that they're able to have by raising the frequencies. Everything I do is vibrational medicine, but by getting them to see things and speak differently. The thing they don't realize is when you speak, abracadabra means as I speak, I create. Ibra. When you speak and you talk about yourself negatively, or call yourself names, or say, oh, I can't do that, wish I could do that, and you say, well, you can't. No, you can't. No, because I'm hopeless, useless, or whatever. That has a vibration which goes straight to the brain. The neuropeptides, in a nanosecond, your brain sifts your hard drive and opens the folder where you felt the worst ever, and all that Pandora's box is let loose, and will spiral you down to a level of apathy and hopelessness. So when people talk constantly, I think, don't do that. Say, instead of saying, I can't do it, you say, well, it's going to be challenging, but by God, I'm going to do it. That's different. And your brain goes, oh, you really want to achieve and be a different person, or create different neuropeptides, the protein molecules that affect every cell in your body. And it's purely when you speak or a thought, that's a vibration. It's measurable. Everything's a frequency. If you're aware of what you are saying, that it's bad for you, and start to reframe that and change that, you will start to get more of the life that you believe you deserve. But a lot of it's got to come from your thoughts and your words, like that Joe Dispenza, changing the habit of being you. Little things, but identifying what you don't like. And who would you like to be? Let's create the archetype in you for that. Let's have a little bit of Oprah Winfrey, a bit of Richard Branson, a bit of the Dalai Lama, or the composite. Who are you really? What traits do you admire that you feel you could aspire to?
Absolutely. And that's such a, and that's actually really easy. Like, that's such a really easy, accessible right now entry point.
Absolutely.
Right there. And, and that alone is can be such a powerful change and a powerful start to that evolution. What do you see as you're looking into your cauldron and you're seeing the what's next of this next wave of spirituality and consciousness coming through? What is happening as for us in that cauldron? What do you see unfolding? What do you see brewing in there?
Well, I see the collective consciousness. I think there's a lot of unraveling of illusions and collapse of illusions going to happen. People have been challenged to the very core of the being of who they think they are, who they believe they can be, and it's like everything they thought that was stable is like disappearing. It's almost like the Titanic's gone down. You jump on a little piece of flotsam and think, I'm going to be safe on here. And it's that piece, it's too small. And you think, oh, fuck. Oh, there's a bigger one. I'll jump on that. No. So you get something called muddled instability where you think, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck in this mess. The world around me is collapsing. Nothing's stable. Nothing as I thought it was. I don't feel safe. And you go into this, I've got to sit in the mess. Or you're going to, right, what can I do about it? What am I going to take? What steps can I do to make some change? What small things can I do to get me out of this victim mentality?
Yeah.
And that's not be part of the collective of what's sweeping the world, is to see that you have got powers within you. You might not be able to change the whole freaking world, but you have got powers not to be like sheep and to step in your power and start to do minute changes, which will be like the snowball that gathers force and volume and mass.
Yeah.
And the matter, it's like, oh my God, I've got a tribe. There's more people like me who think like me. Why don't I hang out with them and let's pool our knowledge and our support of each other? Find your tribe.
Yeah. And I think, and that word tribe brings me back to you know, the reason why I wanted to chat to you, you know, and talk about that. There's a question in there. I'm just having a feel around because I'm feeling like it's a little bit numb in there. So what is it in there? Why that comes through, I will ask you, what is turning you on right now?
What was that?
What is turning you on right now?
Excitement of integrating the kind of, I've had massive change in the last 2 months. I think I've grown 1,000 years and things are happening before my very eyes. I'm like, not just feeling it, but it's like a lot of clarity. Like I am a seer. I didn't own that, but I am. I've seen things. I read energy ahead of time, but it's like I can see outcomes. Or I'll be doing something and get a download and think, oh my God, such and such thing's going to happen. And I might think, no. And next day it happens. I'm thinking, shit, this is big. and it's like honoring it, or owning it, honoring it in every fiber, in every cell of my body. Is, to be honest, it's a gift. And I've hid a lot of stuff for years, where when I was doing high level management roles, I thought, oh my God, I can't be seen in this. Like I would know like, oh, there's a helicopter coming in tonight with heart lungs. I'm going to have to call in all the time. Half an hour later, I get the call and I think, and I'll be thinking, oh, the ground's shaking under me. Oh, it's all right, it's the lift shaft. And I think, no, it's not the frigging lift shaft. It's shaking when I go home. You know, and I think, what the hell do you? It's like you're being awakened. So everybody's can either choose to be awake or ignore what's going on and just stay and hope everything that stays the same and hide from it, or go out and meet the damn thing and embrace it. And that's where I'm at. My excitement, I feel sometimes, look, Queen Boadicea, she fought the Romans when she was like 17. They killed her husband and they raped her daughters and this kind of thing. And she failed, but she killed 70 to 80,000 Romans.
Wow.
She had that belief that no matter what, we're going to keep going, we're going to do it. And, you know, the second time when England was invaded, it didn't succeed. And then they went back to Rome, but the Vikings were still coming. But throughout history, people had visions, like you had King Alfred that wanted to create a united kingdom rather than all different kingdoms fighting. So out of this turmoil, out of this unrest, out of the collapse of everything, you know, I do think we're going to come out of it eventually with a better outcome. Yeah. And I don't believe it's meant to be. You will not get change without perturbation. It's like shaking a bottle of champagne. Poof, it'll go everywhere. And that's what's happening, isn't it? No.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just had this thought, and I'm really curious about it because, you know, we've spoken about, you know, Rome a few times, it's come up. And I was thinking about, you know, the saying, all all roads lead back to Rome. Why is it, and this is a huge generalization, I just want to prephrase that by that, is I feel like, leading back into history and in the past throughout our ancestors and looking at that lineage, I feel like there's a lot of shame that has come through, and separation, or the illusion of separation, in the white British lineage, and a lot of that culture that has been lost. Why is there shame in the English lineage that's filtered through to today? Why are we not seeing that in Rome and in the Italian lineage?
Well, I've never not lived amongst them, so it's a bit of a hard question. But what I do think is that what I've noticed when I came to Australia is that a lot of cultures like your Italians and Greeks will form their own little tribes.
Yeah.
The English tend to filter out and just not do that. I mean, I'm not talking about like an English club or an Irish club now. I'm talking about they form a strong community.
Yeah.
And they probably bring their heritage and their culture with them. Like you would have got a lot of Italians that were brilliant at wine growing. So they would start to do what they did in the homeland.
Yes.
Whereas I don't think that's ever happened with the English emigrating.
Yeah.
You will get Scottish clubs and they'll kind of keep, the heritage of the clan and the backpacks and things like that. Yeah. But I think the Brits don't really have any, they've never done it.
They just dispersed, didn't they?
Absolutely. And it's almost like you're starting a new life, but you've wiped your history clean.
Yeah.
And it's like, for me, I've been delving more and more and more into it. When you asked me to do this, I thought, I've been steeped in things, and I felt, look, I even feel at times I was like Queen Bordesy with a long red hair, blue paint, running around with a sword and a shield. And when I did the shamanic womb, I thought I was in my masculine, I was in my warrior queen.
Yeah.
And masculine had kind of arrested in growth, and now he's grown up and I've embraced him and took him into me. But it's like, there is a place for the warrior queen, but not all the time.
Absolutely. And that's exactly right. There's a place for all things, right?
Yeah.
I just realized, like, I just had the little realization that, thinking about when we first, like, let's say the settlers, or, the people who first entered into, and that English culture did just disperse, is because just thinking about that lineage it was seen very much like a new beginning, like a clean slate, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So energetically, what that did was just essentially whitewashed out the richness and the culture, and it not just the, let's say, the shadow of everything that they were running or trying to run away from, but literally all their culture and all the richness as well. Yeah.
The other thing, if you think how many people came from convicts, they were starving in London.
Yeah.
You stole a loaf of bread, you got transported, or gallows or whatever. So there's a lot of shame attached to. They were in survival. When you're in survival, you can either fight or flight, run for your life, or freeze like a deer in the headlights. And when you've got caught doing something and the shame involved, like shame and guilt, and the church was heavy, like you were evil, you've stolen off someone, it's like you're made to feel so unworthy that you don't belong to be on the planet. So if people were convicted and sent here, and they came with that shame, and they'd left, they might have left family behind because it was one person that got transported, then you'd have to do an awful lot. If you're low on the map of consciousness and you're living in apathy and shame, how did they rise above that? And how can you be proud to bring heritage with you? You've been white like you were no one.
Yeah, that's right. So how can we restore that lineage and that richness now?
Someone has got to, if they've got to start looking into, I mean, people do the family tree, and then they start to feel excited about, you know, like, what's that program on TV? Who do you think you are? It's like maybe they need to do a mini journey of their own and start to look at, you know, if you had an uncle, then everybody looked up to him and they said, he was the black sheep of the family, but he made good. He started his own business, and we were working class, and he broke the kind of web of being stuck in his class.
Yeah.
So it can, again, he might set himself apart, but you've got vows in each chakra and you're very tribal. And if you do that, is the shame involved in doing better than your parents? If you break the mold and you do better, and they were working class and they worked in the cotton mill till the day they retired, and it's like, oh, you know, who do they think they are? I'll bring them down a peg or two.
Yes, yeah. Which, and that's, again, is very huge, and it goes back to the
your place.
The Australian mentality as well, is, you know, the tall poppy syndrome.
Absolutely.
It stems back to that, doesn't it?
But there's a saying, know your place. And so if you were working class, middle class, upper class, it's like, don't step out of them realms, because you're going to get yourself in trouble. And know your place. Stick to the class, you know, and you'll survive.
Yeah. Wow. That's, you know, it's just, it makes sense, and it's something that I haven't really pondered before yet. I think it's coming up now is because it's just, as you said before, it's the champagne bottle that has been shaken, and what's coming out is all of this stagnant energy that has been trapped for generations.
Yeah.
And it's just gone. That is wee.
There can be no change without shaking the champagne bottle.
Yeah, exactly. That feels like I feel like people watching this, there's so much for them to ponder. So I'm just kind of feeling into that, because I feel like that, like, we've popped the champagne bottle, and I feel like we've kind of dispersed that energy again a little bit. So just to be able to kind of bring it all together as we wrap up is, so, you know, you suggested looking into their family tree, tracing that, and beginning that exploration. And also, you know, you mentioned connect with your ancestors, you know, so in meditation, you know, and things, and invite them, set that intention and invite them in, and, you know, and delve into, okay, like, where are you in survival mode? Where is the shame sitting within you? Is there anything else that you would invite people to do to, just, I'm doing this with my hands, like I'm playing with clay, or I don't even know what I'm doing there.
You need it. Look, you know, do you know, it's like you're doing a spell. Yeah. Bending and weaving energy to get a different outcome. Yeah. You're playing with energy.
Yeah. And bending and weaving to create a new outcome. Yeah. How can people bend and weave to create that new outcome?
Well, they have to find what's aligned to them. It's like, otherwise you are mimicking and copying someone, but you're not being aligned. Get talking to your inner person in you. What does your heart want? Your heart will guide you. If you drill with your head, fucks you up.
Yeah.
If you move from your head into your heart and you get guided with the heart being in resonance, that will lead you to your joy and your passion and your purpose. But you've got to get your mind out of the way, because your mind will just run you around in circles and mess you up. You've got to be in alignment. The two have got to be aligned, haven't they?
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
resonance, because it's like a tuning fork and another tuning fork, or an orchestra playing, and it's a horrible din, but if they become in resonance, it's a beautiful harmony. And if you do that, it's like you want to be harmonious in your life, you've got to get yourself aligned and find out what's truly in you that wants to come out, and what has been holding you back. And if you were to come out, what do you need to get rid of or give up or set free to let you be that new person?
Yeah.
You know, what do you need to that be, do, have model? What, if you want to be what aligned to who your truth, what do you have to do, and what will it give you is what you have. You can measure that outcome by looking around what's changed in your world, your life. You might lose a few friends, but you might have gained a tribe.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on the show and just breathing life into this. It's been such a beautiful pondering and revelation, and just that reframe creates reform, and I feel like we've just breathed some life into this area that not many people speak about, and I think it's really important that we reclaim that ownership of our heritage, and and that richness of what it can bring. So thank you for just being all of you, and speaking so openly about this, and just trusting that whatever was going to unfold was going to unfold, because it kind of feels like a bit of a scary conversation.
Yeah, it does.
And it's that I don't want to say the wrong thing, is this, but we did it with such grace and ease.
Yeah, and I think we got through a vibrancy of kind of owning your ancestors, and even if you want to make a little altar and start looking with photographs and start to honor your ancestors, I think that's a start as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think that sounds like such a beautiful, beautiful invitation. But yeah, thank you again for just being you and sharing all of you, and and being that fierce warrior as well as that adventurous maiden who is, knows no time in space and gets up to all sorts of mischief.
Thanks for having me on your show. It's been wonderful.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and I will be back very soon. Bye everybody.
Thank you.